everybody. Welcome to another episode. I'm Mike Monticello.
I'm Ryan Pizlakowski.
And I'm John Lincove.
And today we're going to talk about a pretty fun little car, the 2023 Subaru BRZ. Now, eagle-eyed viewers and listeners might remember that we've talked about the redesigned BRZ before, but this time we're going to focus on two things. One, the version that we just bought for our test program. And also, we're going to talk a lot about how the BRZ differs or is the same as the Toyota GR86, which was also redesigned for 2022, just like the BRZ was. So for those of you that don't know, the BRZ, it's a rear-wheel drive, four-cylinder sports coupe. And when it was redesigned for 2022, it wasn't like a major redesign. It was more some styling, larger rear fender flares, kind of more sculpted, door sills. But for me, the big thing is that they changed the engine. It went from this 2-liter horizontally opposed four-cylinder with 205 horsepower to a 2.4-liter with 228 horsepower. So the point was this car was always kind of a little dinged for not having a lot of low-end power. And so they were trying to improve that. So the BRZ comes standard with a 6-speed manual. That's what we got. Just so you know, a good reason to stay with the 6-speed manual is you have to pay $1,700 for the 6-speed automatic. So so our GR86 is a 2022. Right. This one's a 2023. But they're basically the same car. And that's one of the things we're going to be talking about. I mean, Ryan, they're built at the same factory even. Yeah. I mean, they were designed together with Toyota and Subaru. So the car we bought for this BRZ, it's a 2023 Subaru BRZ Limited with 6-speed manual. Pricing starts at $28,595 for the premium. We got the limited, which starts at $31,095. And there's no options on our car. We didn't get any options whatsoever. Correct?
Correct. And
with the destination charge of $1,020, as tested or going to be tested price of $32,115. Of note, only versions with the automatic can be had with forward collision warning, automatic emergency braking, and lane departure warning, which is kind of a bummer because some automakers with their manual transmissions will still include the automatic emergency braking.
Civic Si.
Yeah, and what means is if the system comes on and it does have to stop the car, the car will stall out if you don't put your clutch in. But that's better than ramming into another car, right? So
whatever it takes.
That's kind of a bummer.
Think.
So let's get into kind of a comparison of these two. Just so you know, we have already tested our 2022 Toyota GR86. That is up on consumerreports.org, so please go check that out. And right now we're putting in the 2,000 break-in miles on our BRZ, which we do with all of our test vehicles. So let's get the conversation started here. John, I'm going to throw it to you. These cars are very similar, but there are some kind of important differences that I think could help people decide, should I buy the Subaru or should I buy the Toyota? So let's start with the handling. Let's say someone said to you, I really want an awesome handling rear drive sports car. Which one of these two would you point them toward?
Look, let me get into a little nitty gritty.
I love it.
I give that.
I love it.
So there's different front and rear spring rates. The Toyota has stiffer front, a little softer rear springs. It has a solid front sway bar. Subaru's is hollow. The Toyota rear bar is 15 millimeters. It's about a millimeter, bigger than the Subarus. The rear bars mount in different locations for the two cars. We're not going to get cutaways here, but just.
I mean, if our producers were good, they would do that.
They would, right? I know. They made the effort. Little differences in like steering knuckle, what they're made of, rear bushings. Like the result is that the BRZ may be a little sharper, a tiny bit sharper, but
the GR86.
Sorry, no. The BRZ may turn in a little quicker, but it's also it also understeers. Okay. You get to that understeer point a little quicker as well. Yeah. So, initial turn in response, better.
Right.
Overall handling, GR86, Gazoo Racing, if you will. You didn't say it with that word.
I didn't, sorry. That's what GR stands for, in case people are wondering.
But really, I mean, look, unless you're tracking it.
Yeah, I would argue that they're very, very, very similar.
Yeah.
I think the ride, we'll get to that, differs more than almost anything between the two of these cars. But they're very, very similar but there are differences to your point. I mean, these cars had the same architecture coming out of this factory, but then they go Subaru and Toyota way, and then they do the tuning.
Nerding out, someone would be like, no, it's the solid rear sway bar versus the hollow. Like, okay, yes. Right. And for a couple $100, you could buy that, put it up on jack stands, and change it.
Sure.
And plenty of people would do that as well.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's so
These
minor.
are cars get modified almost immediately, right? That's just the type of cars they are. They're super simple and they're fun in the first place, but there's a lot of potential still there, right? So people tune these things all the time.
You know what's funny about these two cars is if you look at it, I mean, they have 215s for their tires, you know, which is in the grand scheme of sports cars, that's pretty narrow, which kind of goes to the whole theory behind these cars. And it's been said before, you know, it's more fun to drive a slow car fast than a fast car slow, right? And that is these cars because their limits are actually, even though the handling, look, folks, the handling's fantastic.
Yep.
I mean, these, you're going to have fun on a back road. You're going to have fun at a track. You're going to have fun at an autocross. But it gets to its limits pretty quickly.
Right.
But actually, if you think about it, if you're going to have fun out on the road, it's better to be getting to those kind of limits at a lower speed than a higher speed.
Right.
And I think the cars are very drivable. But I would say that what I've seen so far is the GR86 takes a little more precision to drive it at its limits.
Okay.
You know, than the BRZ. But I don't think. But it also feels because it feels more lively to me. You know, because of that stiffer feeling suspension.
Sure. Yeah.
It's more lively on the back roads. But go ahead.
I would argue that I wouldn't call the limits low. I would say their handling limits are actually rather high, but being in such a small car with that sort of darty, you'd feel like you're going like that. You know, the slow car fasting. You feel it's more exhilarating, right? Because you're down low and you're in this kind of a buzzy car. But it's not, the limits are quite high. I mean, when we do track handling, I mean, these have, you know, nice Michelin summer tires on them. They have quite high handling limits, but I think they're easy to drive at the limit in a way.
I agree. Now,
for a small car, that's kind of impressive.
Okay, so if you guys are saying you think the handling is very similar, which I agree, I think it is very similar, is there a difference in ride quality, Ryan?
So I thought the BRZ rode a little softer. It was a little more comfortable. So if you had to pick one to daily drive, a little more comfortable, I would pick the BRZ. Again, these are not huge differences, but there's a little bit of, I thought there was a little bit more compliance with the BRZ.
Well, it certainly sounds like it from what your specs there, your nerd out specs are going on about, right? Did you find that as well? The BRZ is a little more comfortable? Neither one is comfortable.
As much as you could say either way.
Yeah.
I mean, so I drove the Civic Si for a while and then got into the BRZ. And I mean, it's night and day. The Civic Si is not a soft car,
Right.
As things go. I mean, you know, especially when you compare it, like look at the Integra and, you know, the Acura Integra, and we could go down that route. But this was really harsh, and it made me think that I had gotten into the reincarnation of the early 300Z, you know, the rebuilt, the redone 300, 350Z.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, just the cacophony of noise and just the banging and such. The biggest difference I saw with those two cars, and I know we're not clutch take up was crazy different in the BRZ.
Yeah.
You know, it's right there. You know, it's very low, and it's on and off. So it definitely takes a little more finesse to drive it, but it's a rewarding finesse at the same time when you get there. To answer your question, look, BRZ might be a touch softer, but it's so minor.
I think, I mean, I drove them back to back. Had the BRZ over the weekend, you know, again, putting our braking miles on, so not driving it very hard, but, and then I hopped into the GR86 after that. And I think there is a noticeable difference. It's just a little calmer feeling to me. You know, it does a little better job of absorbing bumps, whereas the GR86 seems, when you get on those kind of rougher roads, it just tends to bounce around, a little harsher impacts. Again, minor amount, but noticeable difference to me.
Sure.
I think neither one is comfortable. You have to know that going in. Right. These are not just cars to buy because they're cute looking. You know what I mean? Because you're going to have to put up with it, you know, put up with this kind of harsher quality than most cars out there have, but you're doing it for the result of really good handling, right?
So in the previous generations of these cars, going all the way back to the beginning of it,
the Scion FRS,
the Scion FRS, and the Subaru BRZ. Now these are way more comfortable than those cars. I think. I mean, those cars had better steering; they were sharper, but the ride was even stiffer. But it was a huge reward. I mean, those cars are a blast to drive. But on a longer trip, you can't wait to get the hell out of the car. I mean, it's. I mean,
I'm surprised they don't have optional deletes of the rear seat and just because you know you're going to take it to the track, which is where these belong. Yeah,
it belongs, but I mean the reality is most people don't.
I know.
Most people don't even take their car to an autocross. Let's talk about the powertrain because that is the identical between the two, but it's different for the 2022 redesign, which is what our car is 2023 redesign or 2023 model year. So talk to us about this engine, Ryan. It went from a 2-liter to a 2.4-liter, a little more power down low, but it's a horizontally opposed engine. Tell us like why that's important, because that's a pretty unique engine. It's a Subaru thing, but it's different than your average engine that's out there.
Yeah, well, it's a horizontally opposed engine. So I mean, it's a Subaru thing, but it's also been around for years. I mean, Volkswagen and Porsche, they've been using a motor like that for years. And basically, what that means is the cylinders, a normal engine, a V8, you have your cylinders are shooting up and down like this, or a straight 6 or straight 4 cylinder, the cylinders are in line.
Right.
This is it's horizontally opposed, so the cylinders are actually firing out on each side. So there's 4 cylinders or 6 cylinders, depending on, this is a 4-cylinder, but you could have 6 cylinders too. They're shooting outside, and the crank is in the center.
Right.
And it gives you a lower, like a lower center of gravity, lower profile motor. And it also gives you that distinct Subaru noise.
Right.
If you ever notice the WRXs and, anything that has a little bit of exhaust on it.
Yeah, these don't have that.
These don't as much, but they still, like you could put an exhaust on that and you would get that boxer note, if you will. So yeah, I mean, and they increased the torque. So they went from 156 foot-pounds of torque on the old version now to 184. But it's where the placement of that is. You get it in the mid-range, a little lower than in the old cars. You have to really wind them out. These have a little more spunk. I mean, you get an extra 23 horsepower, I think, and it's noticeable. I think it's fantastic. Now, going back, I mean, we drove those automatic borrowed ones when they first came out. I don't think the automatics show that power as well as the manuals do. The manuals felt more lively. I think it's just due to the gear ratios are slightly different or whatever. So it's noticeable more so in the manual, and I think that's a great thing. We've used these cars for tire testing for years, and I always said I wish this car had another 50 horsepower. Right? Yeah. We're not quite there, but it's still much better than it was. So they did a great job, I think.
It's super fun to drive. I mean, the manual's pretty good. It's not the most amazing manual ever. It's a little notchy, but it's pretty good. John, would you point someone toward if you really need an automatic, obviously go with it. But I feel like the manual really suits this car's persona way better than the automatic.
Well, it does, because I mean, if you're in traffic, you love the car and can't drive a stick. I mean, actually, it's a reason to learn to drive a stick.
Yeah,
to buy the car. Would I dissuade someone from buying the car just because it's automatic? No, but I would certainly not endorse the automatic as like that's the way to go to enjoy this car.
Right.
It's stick all the way. Especially if you're going to then do any performance fun outside of driving on regular streets.
Right. Let's talk just real quick, touch on the interior, which is the interior is again basically identical between the BRZ and the GR86. And the infotainment system, the controls are pretty easy to use. But man, they look pretty outdated. These are brand new cars, and they already look kind of outdated.
I love it though.
You do?
I think it's simple. Yeah. It's just there's manual knobs for it's like it's normal.
Toggles.
Leave it alone. No, there's got the heated seat switches are just toggles in the middle of the dash.
Those are the oldest
high and low.
Subaru old school.
Yeah, and the same switches they've been using for the past 15 years. I mean, it's but I think that's great. It's a simple, fun car to drive.
I love the seats. Both of these cars have this ultra suede material, so the seats already have a lot of side bolstering to hold you in place, and then the ultra suede is comfortable and holds you in place even better. But there are some oddities about the car, like the cup holders.
They're useless.
Are way back here.
But you're not supposed to be drinking.
I was drinking a Red Bull on my way home from the track yesterday because I was really tired,
and it was rattling around in there.
And
too.
I couldn't reach it. I mean, there is another cup holder over here, and then there's a center armrest, but. Basically, you're always going to have it open anyway because you're going to throw it because there's no place to put anything in the car, and it's way so far back you can't reach it.
No, and if you have a tall water bottle in that, you just keep whacking it with your elbow. It's absolutely infuriating.
Again, those are not reasons really to not buy the car, but it is things you're going to be putting up with. That in those ways it feels so outdated. And then as a smaller person, I have to sit further forward than you guys do. My elbow actually rests on this very hard part of the door armrest. Back here, it's padded. Where I put my elbow, it's super hard. So minor things. So let's go ahead
on that though. For being a small car, and I'm about 6'2". I actually fit in her quite well, which is a important thing to note. For people.
Note the helmet. Like
there's
the gurney bump type thing, not on the blister on the top, but
they pay attention to that kind of stuff. So I thought that's impressive because some of these little cars, I don't fit in that well, and I actually fit in this, and I can drive it really well.
Yeah, and like the center console intrusion's not that bad.
I mean, you're hemmed in, but I mean, look at the car; it's tiny.
So I got 2 questions for you guys. Well, really, one for you, John, and then one for both of you, which is John, why are Subaru and Toyota building 2 cars that are so similar? Yes, we pointed out there's some differences in ride and handling. But they're basically nearly identical cars. Why do they do that?
Well, Toyota has been investing in Subaru, first of all. Toyota also has done this a number of times. So not only with Subaru with their electric vehicles, the Subaru Solterra and the Toyota BZ4X.
Yep. Nice job.
They did with Mazda, where the Yaris was actually a Mazda 2 that was sold in Canada. You know, I mean, there's other...
Toyota Supra.
Toyota Supra, thank you, was the BMW Z4. So Toyota's motorsports just isn't the back to the days of the Celica and the MR2 and you know, all those performance cars. Right. So it's a cheaper way, or it's a way of spreading the cost out. Yeah. I mean, it's not like they're investing, but it's a way of having another vehicle just in the showroom. Saves money for the other manufacturer, you know, cuts costs. So it's kind of like badge engineering, but without being in the exact same company, like, you know, General Motors does with Chevy and GMC.
All right.
There's probably other reasons, but I think that's pretty much
it's working.
The easiest way.
It's working.
Yeah.
Okay, so moment of truth. Ryan, let's start with you. If you were buying one of these cars, which one would you buy and why?
I would do the 86, the GR86.
Why?
Well, this is going to sound silly, but I think it looks better with that wing. It has that like ducktail like wing on the back. I think that looks really cool. I don't know. And
sort of Supra-ish.
Yeah. Yes. So that's what it kind of looks like a mini, like a mini Supra in a way, right? No, but I think that the things we talked about, I mean, it's a little more engaging to drive and a little bit more rewarding once you kind of smooth it out. Again, they're so freaking close. I mean, it's you wouldn't be upset either way, I don't think. But.
John? I would go with the one I get the best deal on.
Okay, that's fair. That's a fair statement. Yeah.
I mean, I would, you know, I mean, if it was between a new and a used one, and God, you know, we know used car prices and all that stuff. I mean, I might go with the used one that's got some miles, which I wouldn't care about tracking.
Right.
But I mean, I would buy this purely because I'm going to the track.
You're gonna,
I mean, I've had students with this, these previous generation ones, and you know, they're when the student's good, you know, they're great through corners. You're all over someone in a corner. Right. And then, like you said, in the main straight, you're just kind of like, okay, bye.
Right. Yeah.
Go bye. Yeah. But yeah, it's a rewarding car. So that's why I would look at it from that perspective.
So if it were me, after driving the two, I'd go with the BRZ just because it's a little nicer to live with. I'm not, you know, if I was going to do any autocrossing or definitely a track day, I'd do it with the GR86. But because most of my time these days is driving around, you know, just regular to and from work, and then, you know, your occasional back road strafing, I would go with the BRZ for that more comfortable ride.
Sure.
And I like that ducktail. That does look.
It looks good.
It does.
I think it looks. I mean, the cars are very similar, right? But I think the 86 looks a little better.
Yeah.
We don't rate things on looks, just personal opinion.
Yeah. So again, the BRZ will be going through our test program soon. The GR86 already through our test program. Please check out the results on consumerreports.org. or cr.org if you're lazy, I guess. I don't know. If you can't type out Consumer Reports, it's hard.
True.
Anyway, so stay tuned for that. And now let's move on to our audience question of the week. And don't forget to send those questions, comments, 30-second video clips to talkingcars@icloud.com. That's the best way to reach us, folks.
Hi, my name is Paul. I just moved to Essex, Vermont from Wilmington, North Carolina, so I'm totally new to snow tires. I'm just wondering, when comparing snow tires to all-weather tires, do your performance ratings compare on the same scale, as in can I compare them to each other? I live on a paved road up here, and I'm just hoping I can get by with all-weather tires on a two-wheel drive and a four-wheel drive car and won't have to cycle between snow tires. Just looking for some advice. Thanks.
So great question, Paul. And wouldn't you know it, this is exactly why we dragged Ryan out of his cozy, cushy tire building lair to come answer this question about
it's like a tire playground in
there. All weather versus winter tires. So Ryan, what do you have for Paul?
Yeah, so well, welcome to New England for one.
Yeah.
In Essex, Vermont, a beautiful place. You will see snow. There's no doubt about that. So I mean, he's already kind of on the right path. He understands, you know, some people run winter tires in the winter and they swap them out in the spring for regular all-season tires. And now there's this new group of tires out there called all-weather tires. We test them within our all-season group. These are tires that, think of these tires as all-season tires with added snow and ice traction. So a little more emphasis there, right? And sometimes when you adjust a tire, you design a tire to do something a little better in some area, you pull some
compromise. You're going to say
a little compromise
yeah.
away from something else. That's tires are a compromise. Nothing is perfect, right?
Right.
So in his situation, I would tell him this. Well, let me answer the question actually about the ratings.
Yeah.
If you are comparing our ratings, our winter snow tires against our all-season or performance all-season tires, you can compare those on the same plane. Those were all tested on a Toyota Camry, and they were all tested in the same year. So then, the next year we'll test truck tires, and the truck tires can all be compared, and then the ultra-high performance can be compared because they were all tested in the same year on the same cars. So when you see a winter tire has excellent snow traction and excellent ice braking, that's because, well, they are excellent, okay? The all-weather tires you'll see, some of them will have excellent snow traction and maybe a little less ice braking or so. That snow traction rating, yes, they're the all-weather tire is very, very good, but remember, those ratings are a bin. So there's a high end of that excellent blob, and there's a low end of that blob. Those winter tires are the max.
So if you were looking at the actual numbers, you would see that the all-weather doesn't have quite as high of a number, even though it might be getting the highest blob.
It falls into that category,
Chevron,
right? The Chevron, yeah. We used to call them blobs.
That's okay.
Excuse me.
We're old school.
So my point with that is that there's no replacement for a dedicated winter tire.
Okay.
If you have to drive in the snow, a lot of snow, there's just no replacing a straight up winter tire. They're designed to do one thing really well, and when you do that, they do it really well, right? I mean, you can make a product do that. The all weather tire is still a compromise, but it's better than an all season tire. So in his situation, if he doesn't have to go to work in the middle of a snowstorm, or he doesn't live in some crazy back road, all-weather tire, and even on a front-wheel drive car, two-wheel drive car, you can get around.
So you understand his he asked a reasonable question, was he doesn't want to have to change
do the swap. And that's the beauty of these all-weather tires. That's the point of them.
He might be able to get away with that.
I think he, by the sounds of it, I think he'll be able to.
Okay.
Just keep in mind, I mean, they are not straight up dedicated winter tires. And getting up and going is one thing. Stopping, turning. That's another huge aspect of it. So, it really comes down to your lifestyle. If you absolutely have to drive, you're a nurse or someone that has to drive in the middle of a snowstorm to get to work, and you live in a place like that, I would recommend a straight up winter tire.
Because you never know when you live in a place like that. The weather forecast might not have said you were going to get a foot of snow.
Right.
Maybe you thought you were going to get 2 or 3 inches, and you're stuck out somewhere visiting someone or whatever, and now you got to get home in a foot of snow, right?
Yeah. I was going to ask Ryan, since a lot of roads in Vermont are really well-groomed gravel or unpaved, but they're still primary roads,
right?
And then the snow gets packed down on it. Does that change the equation?
Yeah. Well, listen, if you're
should he be more aware of that, having moved up here?
You definitely be more aware of it. I mean, it depends where you live. I mean, there are places in Vermont are very, very, very rural, and there's areas that aren't as, they're, a lot of paved normal roads. They plow it, blah, blah, blah. But if you are in an area where you're constantly driving on packed snow, a winter tire is probably more appropriate.
Yeah.
You have to kind of weigh that out. But I do think, if he even mentions he's on a paved road, and he didn't sound like he was, he had to go out.
So he might be able to get away with it.
I think so. Yeah. Definitely go through our rating, take a peek at them. I would say the dedicated winter tires are going to perform better on ice. For sure, because their compounds are much softer, which stay more pliable when they get really cold.
All right. Okay, well, thanks for the great question, Paul. Hopefully we helped you out a little bit there. That's going to do it for this episode. If you want to learn more about the cars and the topics we talked about, you can click on the links in the show notes. Don't forget to send those questions, comments, 30-second video clips to talkingcars@icloud.com. Folks, we love the video questions. This episode was magnificently produced by Dave Abrams and painstakingly edited by Toli Shumsky. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next week.